For it to go live. Okay, we are live. We are live. Finally, we've been trying for the last 20 minutes to get our technical elements worked out. Arza couldn't hear me on her end, and we troubleshot her side. We troubleshot my side. I think it was on my end. So, man, it's frustrating when that kind of stuff happens because you just don't know. You just don't know. You don't know why. So thanks for hanging in there. I hope we didn't lose anybody in the audience that was, because there was another stream that I had created that was a placeholder for our conversation. So I hope that that people still find us. I'm sure they will. So in fact, I see 13 people watching right now. So that's great news. Maybe that's going to build to 1 billion. I'm thinking in the next 3 minutes, we're shooting for 1 billion. But Arza, I don't want to make you nervous.
No pressure, Andy. This is great. 13, 1 billion. We're planting seeds at this point. So whoever comes,
just me and you, private conversation.
What's that?
It's just me and you. It's a private conversation.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So I wanted to have you on because the pandemic for me has brought into just a lot more clarity. I don't know if it's more clarity. I would say it's more awareness around my mortality. And not just my mortality, but the mortality of my mom, my aunt, the people that I love in my life. It's called into question all my decisions now I've got an underlying current of how will this affect other people? How will my decision to whether I quarantine or not quarantine, whether I wear a mask or don't wear a mask, will my 89-year-old aunt die anyway? Well, yes, she will. Will she die of COVID? There's just all these things that I don't normally think about. They're just invisible to me normally. And I've got this sense that this is a very powerful, it's a very powerful conversation and a very important conversation for us to be having as a culture, for us to be having as people, whether you're 89 and on death's door. My aunt's not on death's door, but whether you're on death's door or whether a loved one is on death's door or whether nobody's on death's door, but we're all going to die. And that's why we're here.
Yeah. And I think the element of the unexpected nature and the randomness of this illness, right? 104-year-old people are surviving and 27-year-old people are dying, right? So it's the unexpected nature. And we've never really confronted this kind of unexpectedness as a culture. We like to think that we have control over what's going to unfold in our lives. We really don't. But I would say until mid-March 2020, we all kind of lived in a little bit of that illusion, if not a lot of that illusion. And I think that's been stripped away. And it makes people feel vulnerable. So,
it's really uncomfortable. I don't want to, I find myself not wanting to think about it. I don't want to think about the ramifications of what if we all just go okay, for example, we went to Palm Desert for the weekend, excuse me. And we were social distancing with another family. So we were staying at their house. We increased the sphere of our social distance bubble. And we decided to order pizza on Saturday night. And me and the other dad went to this pizza place to pick up the pizza and discovered that it looked inside the pizza place when I went in to pick up the pizza, and I had my mask on and I, was all ready, but it looked like business as usual. It was packed with people. They were eating in various states of masked or unmasked. Obviously you can't be eating and putting food in your mouth with a mask on. And the staff was in various states of masked or unmasked. Most were masked, but there were some that were unmasked. And there was a line out the door, people waiting to be sitting, not 6 feet apart, not like what the grocery store lines. And I just thought, okay, we're going back to life.
Okay.
And am I, like, I don't know. It just made me like all these, it was a cascade of thoughts, like an overwhelming cascade of thoughts, like both good and bad, both positive and negative. I'm not saying that necessarily is a bad thing, but there are implications to that.
Right. There are
And,
implications to that. And there's suggestions perhaps that, we as a culture don't like to talk about death and dying, right? And I think we are notoriously death deniers in our culture. So are all those people in the restaurant, were they death deniers or were they invincible somehow, right? And everybody has such a different response to this. Like anything, right? Like anything, we're going to respond to something that comes our way in a different way than our neighbors or even our loved ones. But I'm not an epidemiologist. And I am a bit of a rules follower, but that doesn't sound like it sounds too early to be doing something like that, I guess is my thought on it.
yeah, and I don't really know, like I've had these really weird thoughts that I judge myself for having.
Like what?
Like, well, my mom and aunt are going to die anyway.
Which is true.
Like, what's the harm?
Yeah.
They're going to die anyway. And it's not like, what's the harm? Like I should go inject them with COVID. Like, that's not what I'm saying.
No,
but if they practice what they need to practice in terms of distancing, and they are, and the rest of us who are not in those risky categories and who are not close to being, not close to the end of their life anyway, then maybe there's nothing wrong with that. I don't, but see, like there's these, I think everybody's having their thoughts like that are maybe people aren't having. I don't know. I'm certainly having them. I'm being honest about having them. I'm not particularly happy that I'm having those thoughts, but I
think those thoughts, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but I think those thoughts come from quarantine fatigue, right? And I think what you're describing is coming. We just it's just a little bit further down the path than we are,
sure.
As a country,
yeah.
Generally speaking. I think the people who are really at risk are going to have to sort of fend for themselves.
Yep. Well, let me ask you a question more generally about death and dying. Do people ever get comfortable? Are you comfortable with death and dying?
No. I mean, comfortable is not the word that I would use. I think for me more is the idea that I've made peace with the fact that I'm going to die. I've made peace that that's a normal part of the living thing. And for me also personally, I feel like when I know I'm going to die, when I have an awareness and a connection to the fact that I'm going to die, and for me, it's a pretty regular connection. I feel like I live my life differently because it's not finite. This little adventure that we're all on is going to come to an end, and it really impacts many.
It is finite, right? You said it's not finite, but it is.
I'm sorry, it is finite. Of course,
it is finite,
yes,
right?
It's not infinite, is what I meant to say.
Right.
Exactly right. Yes, yeah, and it impacts the choices that I make on a daily basis, on a bigger scale. Yeah, it impacts me regularly. The fact that I know that I will die.
Tell me more about that.
Okay, so
what sort of impact does it have?
So when I was 40, many years ago, I decided that after being a birth doula, I had been a birth doula for about 5 years. My primary role was being home with kids. I had a husband who was building a big career, and my primary role was to be home with kids. But then at the age of 40, and I had 3 young kids, and at the age of 40, I decided that I wanted to become a nurse. I wanted to professionalize my skill set. And at 40, with 3 very young kids, and I like to say a workaholic husband, I decided to go back to nursing school. Because people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, when I look back at my life, I want to know that I have been on that, I had been on that path, and that I had met that goal for myself personally and professionally. And so I spent 5 years. Pursuing a nursing degree, and got out of nursing school at the age of 45. Anybody who's thinking about doing something like that, it can be done. It then took me into the other parts of my life. And I couldn't have gotten here without having been there. And I tried to talk myself out of it numerous times, Andy, because it was expensive, and I had to hire an au pair, right? And tuition there were all kinds of reasons not to do it. Mm-hmm. But I knew that if I was going to look back, because I come from a line of professional women, and I knew if I was going to look back at my life, I wanted that to be part of my story. So. Andy, have I lost you? So, ladies and gentlemen, this is.
Are you there?
Hey, okay. I'm here, Andy. Oh my gosh.
Am I closing
cursed?
another window because it was.
What?
No. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you. Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, go ahead. So camera, but I can only see me, Andy.
I see you. The broadcast is live.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can. We're good.
So you're live.
Yeah. I'm here. I'm not seeing you. We're all live. Yeah, we're all live. Okay. We are
alive. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So tell me how that relates to the decisions you make about death. Like, was that part of the decision making of going back to get your nursing degree?
Yeah.
Like your context of death and dying?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't see it. I didn't understand it that way then. I do now. But I think the point is, I'm not saying go to nursing school. What I'm saying is follow what matters to you, because at the end of the day, you're going to look back, and it's important to have been true to yourself and been yourself in the whole sense of the word, right? And so that's my point. And so it can start early, right? It can start when you're 40. It can start anytime. And what those of us in the death positive movement are talking about, and I'm not so crazy about the word death positive, but that's the word that's being used. I prefer the word death wellness, or the idea of talking about death and dying as part of wellness. And so those of us in the death positive wellness movement are really trying to get people to understand that this doesn't go on forever, and identify what matters to you, and make those things, express those things, and make those things become real for you one way or another. And that happens early in one's life, with sort of an understanding that death will be part of their story one day. Some people have that awareness. And when we work with people at the point of terminal diagnosis, we try to get people, and I'm going to get a little bit sort of out of the box here, but we try to get people to make conscious and deliberate decisions about the treatment they want and don't want, should they be confronted with a time in their lives when they cannot speak for themselves. Right? So some people feel really strongly about doing everything. Do everything. But does this individual really understand what everything means? And does this individual understand that once we do everything, it doesn't mean the individual survives? And once we do everything, it doesn't mean that the quality of life that we have currently is going to come back. Do we really understand what everything means? And some people say, don't you dare touch me with a ventilator or with CPR. I mean, people really run the gamut. And all we want, those of us who are death educators, we just want people to know what matters to them and then follow through, follow up, talk with the people that you love, document your wishes, tell your physicians about it, your primary care doc, your oncologist, if that's what you're battling with, is with cancer, or with your lung doctor or with your heart doctor. I mean, those are all conversations that we should be having well before COVID hit, and particularly because COVID is so random and we're finding that it really comes into the body in ways that we're still learning about. I mean, I read an article about a woman who had a kidney infection, and it was a kidney infection, but it was really COVID in disguise for about 2 weeks. So the questions are really important for us, and you don't have to tell your loved one, like, so can I give you a personal example, Andy?
I'd love that. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So my husband and I talk about this a lot. And for me, with the whole COVID situation, I want my husband to know, and he knows, that I want him to put me on a ventilator, for example, if I'm at the stage where I'm on a ventilator, chances are I cannot speak for myself, right? I'm critically ill, right? And if I get to that point, I want my husband to put me on a ventilator. If there's a chance for me to return to a quality of life that will allow me to enjoy my family, right? My big overarching goal now is that I want to be able to live to see grandkids and spend time with that. I don't necessarily expect to have the quality of life that I have now, but if I can be with these people and connect with these people, that's meaningful to me, and that would be a line in the sand, if you will, for my husband and the people that are caring for me to understand that that's what matters to me, as an example.
Well, so that brings up a question for me is, what does it mean to return to life, to have did you say normal? What was your wording that you said?
So
put me on a ventilator if I have a chance of
Yes.
What did you say again?
If I have a chance to come back to the point where I will be able to enjoy my family. Does that mean I'm in a wheelchair? I can tolerate that. Does that mean, do you know what I'm saying? Everyone has their own lines.
Right, but have you delineated what those lines are?
Pretty much.
Because I mean, it just brought up a whole slew of questions for me. What does that mean? Does it mean you're running around? Does it mean you're able to drive? Does it mean you have cognitive function? You can feed yourself? Does it mean you can?
Great questions.
You can read a book. You can navigate online.
Exactly.
Like, what does it mean?
That's right. What does it mean to you to undergo significant invasive treatment, and what are your lines? And everybody's got a different line.
I mean, are those the types of questions you recommend people be asking and be writing down?
Thinking about, and having
Thinking about.
conversations with their loved ones and with their providers.
Where do these answers go?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So they can go into a video, right? You can just pop a video on and say, "Dear, lovely, wonderful family. Nobody knows what's ahead. Clearly we're in very uncertain times, but these are the things."
I immediately get welled up when I think about doing that.
I know.
Holy crap.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah. But what a gift, Andy.
Sorry.
No, it's you know what? Because I think what you're really tapping into is, first of all, obviously how much you love these people and how much leaving them means to you. But I would also say, and I really believe that this gesture on our part, even despite how afraid we are, despite how uncomfortable we are, is the most wonderful gift we can give our families and the people that will be caring for us. I read another article. I'm doing a lot of reading now. The New York Times has a lot of stuff around being clear around the things that matter to you, because not only does your family need to know what matters to you, the healthcare workers are often left to have to make decisions without your family there, because with COVID, our families can't be there. Right? So they have to make life and death decisions. Right. And if something is really important to you, you have an obligation to say it out loud. You have an opportunity to say it out loud, however you want the words to be. Right? If you've got a strong opinion, let it be known.
Sue asked this question, or she didn't really ask a question, but she says, you need a living will. What I've had that before. When I was a Marine, we had to create living wills.
Okay.
How's that different from what we're talking about?
Okay, so that's a great question.
One of the pieces.
It is one of the pieces. It is definitely one of the pieces. First of all, the living will is not a legally binding document in all states. I live in Massachusetts. It's not a legally binding document, but it does give your caregivers some idea of what you want. Right? It can just be a letter. So, Andy, I'm going to encourage your listeners, your viewers, to go to the website, The Conversation Project, all one word, The Conversation Project. And it's a wonderful resource to start thinking about all kinds of things related to
.com,
I believe. I never get that right. Yeah, .com or .org. Yeah. And one of the tools
that put it in the chat.
Arza,
can I ask you a quick question? Do you see the chat on your end? Can you see the questions coming up and stuff on your side, or do you just see me and you?
I don't even see you. All I see is just a screen that says, yeah, I don't see you and I don't see the chat, Andy. Let me see. Nope.
Okay, it's okay. I think the chat is only something that I see normally. And normally you would see yourself. I don't know why that's not working. I screwed that up. So
it's no big deal.
Let's just be clear. I screwed it up. Anyway, but we got your voice. So wait, we go to the Conversation Project. Oh, it's .org. It's
.org. Thank you. I hope I remember that. .org. And I want people to look at, it's a letter that a woman, her name is Dr. Boudreau. And she wrote a letter to her family and she calls it Don't Panic. And it's a wonderful example of an advance directive, of a document, of intentionality around what this particular person wants should something happen. And in her case, should something unexpected happen. And this is well before COVID. So it's a wonderful example of how informal it needs to be, or it can be, and how powerful it can be for those that you leave that are in the mix of making decisions, and if it happens to be that you leave them behind. And I read this letter for everything that I do, and it makes most people very emotional.
Is it a letter that just gives you it's just a good example of what you can do yourself?
Exactly. Homemade, do it yourself, DIY, completely, no lawyers, no witnesses, very, very low tech, very, very high impact.
But how do you get a healthcare worker to follow your wishes if there's no legally binding document like a will? Like, how do you, do you tattoo it to your arm?
Okay, great question. So if you live in a place where electronic medical records can capture your wishes, that's a wonderful way to put it into the computer. Unfortunately, in the reality of the ICU and in COVID more broadly, a lot of times the healthcare workers won't be able to go and look up your advanced care plan or your advanced directive, right? So then they're going to rely on your family member across the other end of the phone. And so what that means for us is that we've discussed with our family members, not the exact things we want and don't want for care, but that's an option. But I would suggest that it's more about what I value. So for me, my value is about being with my family, right? And my value is about being able to connect with people that I love, even if I'm compromised. Now, I have a line too. My line is, if I don't know who you are, I won't know who you are. And you need to put me into some kind of skilled nursing facility, and I will live out the rest of my natural life in that sort of disconnected place where my husband feels obligated to come and visit me once a week and can't go on with his own life. I'm being really honest that I don't want that. So those are some of the things to entertain. And I'm not saying dive in.
You can't put in it.
You can't put in
Can
what?
you put in it? I mean, can you put in, like I think of Dr. Kevorkian, can you put in euthanize me? Like, you can't do that.
Well, so it's a
it's
little
just,
more
if I'm
nuanced than that.
dying, let me die.
Well, if I'm dying, let me die. But you in California, you guys have the option for death with dignity. And that's an entirely separate conversation. But I want to, so death with dignity means that two physicians need to sign a piece of paper that basically says you have the mental capacity to make your own decisions. You have a terminal illness, and without treatment, this terminal illness will take your life within about 6 months or less. They then prescribe, and there's a whole process, Andy, and I'm not going to do it justice, but I know in California you have that option. Those of us in the world of hospice and palliative care are not so crazy about that option, because those of us in hospice and palliative care feel like we can change the quality of people's lives without them having to end their lives. But it's a controversial conversation, but available in California and Oregon and Washington State, Vermont, New Jersey, Colorado. I forgot the rest of them, but there's a growing number of states that have that option. They call it death with dignity, or medical aid in dying, I think is another name for it, Andy. So, but
is it something you have to opt into, Arza?
The option to do, yes, but you've got to, it's pretty rules bound. You have to opt in. You have to opt in. Andy, I've lost you.
Nope, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just not talking.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. I can't see your visual. So
Right.
you have to opt in. Yes. And it's very rules bound and it's very highly controlled. And as I said, that's a whole separate talk.
Got
But
it.
what we want people to understand before a crisis comes, right? Even so, before a crisis comes, at any age, 18 years of age or older, we want everybody to have a healthcare proxy. That individual is an individual who's going to speak on your behalf should you not be able to speak for yourself. If you're 18 years old and you've been in a car accident and they roll you into the emergency room and a parent walks in, they say, "Oh, this is my child." It is within the legal rights of the provider to say, "Are you the healthcare proxy?" And if you say, "I don't know," that could create a whole set of difficult circumstances. So we encourage everybody 18 years of age or older to have a healthcare proxy. And that healthcare proxy isn't necessarily your spouse or your sibling. It really needs to be somebody who can speak on your behalf, can really sort of assert themselves in the context of a medical situation. They are people that are comfortable advocating, and equally, and I think perhaps the most important is that they can advocate for you even if they don't believe that what you are doing is necessarily the best thing. So they might see things differently than you, but still can advocate for you. So it's something to think about and something to consider and something that everybody should have.
Who do you tell that like I could pick one right now off the top of my head. Okay, it's my best friend. But nobody else knows. I might tell him, right? I should tell him if it's my best friend. But who else do I tell?
You tell your wife, and she's going to say, "Why didn't you pick me?"
Right.
And you need to give her some time to process that, Andy. And then you could, if you have brothers or sisters, why didn't you pick me? And so that's a really important question, Andy. Right. You tell them.
I'm not saying that that's who I pick. I just use an example. I don't know who I would pick. That's a really hard question to answer right on the spot. Yeah. I can see why I wouldn't want my wife or my sister or my mom or I can see why I wouldn't want those people because they're influenced in very emotional ways to do things that I may not want.
Exactly. And I want to.
But you have to tell somebody official. Does it have to be on some record somewhere officially?
Yes. So in the state of Massachusetts, we have a form. You can go on Healthcare Proxy State of Massachusetts, and there's a form. And in Massachusetts, we need 2 witnesses. In some states, we need notaries to sign. And there are ways around getting notaries in this era of COVID. They've figured it out. So if that's what your state requires, don't let that be an obstacle to getting that done.
So no matter how old you are, I mean, obviously, if you're not under 18, your proxy is your parents.
Correct.
But if you're over 18, a healthcare proxy, what are some of the other things that you recommend people do? I mean, this is obviously going to change with age, but somebody under 50 years old, let's say 50 or under, what are some of the things that they should do? Like actions you would consider they should take today?
Okay, so if you're healthy and well, and just make sure that you have a will of your possessions, right? So a will is about things, and I'm not a lawyer, but as I understand wills, they're about your possessions. And so that should be in order. If you are a blended family, make sure that the proper spouse gets the things versus the ex-spouse. I read something where there was somebody who didn't manage that situation, and their first spouse got something that their second spouse was expecting. Right? And that's devastating. And there's nothing they can do about it. Right? So there's all kinds of paperwork. Andy, I'm going to send you, I call it your death file. And it's 20 things. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And it's 20 documents.
Everybody needs a death file. Jesus, it sounds like something out of like a James Bond movie or something.
You know what?
Like it's
but think about it.
For your eyes only.
Yeah, but think about it. If something should happen to you unexpectedly, and that's, again, this is the beginning of the conversation. We talked about COVID is bringing up the whole unexpected dying thing. If something should happen to you unexpectedly, I'll give you two scenarios. You've talked about nothing. Your paperwork is in 12 different places. You haven't really spoken to a lawyer or an accountant or a financial planner. And your family's got to pick up the pieces while they're grieving and trying to pick up the pieces and start their lives again. That's one scenario. The second scenario is you've spoken to a financial planner and a lawyer and an accountant, and you have all your documents pretty much in order. I'm not saying it has to be perfect, but you have a will and you have, and I'll send you a copy of these 20 things, and it's in a binder, and your healthcare proxy knows where it is. Your loved ones know where it is. Everything is clear so that there is no hassle. There is no potential to fracture families over this is a delicate time for families, so people are delicate and tender, and who knows what might unfold in that time that could fracture your family forever. If you've been clear and if you've made it much simpler for them, their bereavement process is different, their levels of depression are different, their ability to stay intact as a family is better. And they're going to be able to spend time thinking about you, not thinking about how angry they are at what a mess you left them.
Right.
And the
are these 20 things in a list somewhere? Are they, there's some people already commenting that they would love to see what those things are.
Sure.
How would I make that available?
I will send it. I'll send you an email, Andy, and you can distribute it. I will send it to you when we're done. Yeah, I will send it to you when we're done. Cool. Easy. Yeah, easy. And I just want to remind people that my contact information is hopefully available, and that I'm really happy to talk with anybody and spend time with you. Just because this is a real passion for me, and I just think that this changed people.
This is what you do, right? You're an
this is what I do.
You're an end of life coach. I mean, your coaching practice is built around end of life.
Correct. This is what I do. Yes, this is what I do. But equally important is that I really it feels very empowering to me to talk with people about their particular situations and help them navigate something meaningful and important. And that's why I'm here on this earth, Andy. And I'm not exaggerating. So yeah, this is powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's really powerful stuff. I mean, it just brings up so many emotional elements that are uncomfortable. And, as a 53-year-old man with a family of a wife and a son and a sister and, people that I love, I think immediately to the things that I'm not doing or I haven't done, or that I have, and how do I want to, as uncomfortable as it makes me, our friend Kirk Souter, the exercise he did with his family, where he had a meeting, he had a family meeting and told each one of his family, I can't even really say it without getting choked up.
I hear
he basically told them what he needed to tell them in case he he passed. It's geez Louise.
Jeez Louise. How courageous and
Swallowing,
how
swallowing.
marvelous. And what a gift. And you know what? That's one way to do it. And not everybody is Kurt Souter. I mean, Kurt is is a
Yeah, no, that was
spectacular and
amazing.
courageous guy. But I would say, and I share this with everybody, my mother-in-law died 11 years ago, and she wrote me a letter personally to me, about what I meant to her. And I still have it. I still look at it. And so if you're not a person to call up or to Zoom or to one day when we get face to face with the people we love, there's more than one way to do the exact same thing. And it will have the power. And you can give them this letter now, right? You don't have to be dead to give it to them. You can give it to them now.
Well, the video to me feels like I could hold it together and remember the things I want to say without looking at them and just being so emotional that I lose everything I really wanted to say. So the video to me, I mean, maybe it starts with, for me, this is me personally, maybe it starts with a letter or just writing, and then it carries into a video. And then maybe at some point I get the Kirk Souter, Superman, like I can do this, do it live. But I don't know if that would ever happen, but you're right. It doesn't have to go that way. And
and none of this, there's no one way to do this, right?
Yeah.
There's no one way to do this. It's so personal. It's so individual. And I just want to say out loud, my whole file isn't complete, right? I'm in the process. I'm 59. And I'm in the process of going through what it is that I need to, finish up so that my family has everything they need should I die unexpectedly. I also want to say, when my children are they're grown, but every time my husband and I go away, they know where all our business, where all our affairs are. They know how we want our bodies to be, managed, if you will. I mean, we've had these conversations on a regular basis. My children are now rolling their eyes at me because.
How old are they? How old are your kids?
So 28, 26, and 23.
Okay.
But I've not yet reached the point where I want them to manage it themselves. So I have my brother, who is the overseer, if you will, should both my husband and I die at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, because I don't want them to get fractured, and I want some. They're still young, and it's a difficult time, and for me, that's how it felt right for me, is that they won't handle it by themselves.
Right. Arza, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This happens in every conversation, but I know I could go on and on and on talking with you about this.
Anytime, Andy. If there's a specific topic,
no,
I'm
I
happy to talk about it.
like a lot more topics coming out of this conversation, and a lot more reasons to come back. And there's already comments in the Facebook threads. Thank you, and appreciate what you do. And
thanks.
So,
thank you.
And people are looking forward to seeing that. I'll make sure that the show notes. I'm not sure where to put those show notes, but I'll probably put them in YouTube, or I'll put a picture of them or something. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out how to get them out.
And just so you know, Andy, I'm putting something on Facebook in a couple of weeks with a very, very good friend of mine. She's an ICU nurse, and she's going to talk about what the real ICU is. So when someone says, I want everything, she's going to talk about that in great detail. And then we're going to do some advanced directive work, talking with ourselves or with loved ones about what matters to us if we were in a situation where we couldn't speak for ourselves. So we'll do that in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Where do people find you? Like, how would they find that conversation? Where do you put your stuff? And
so probably if they wanted to email me, my email address is Arza, ARZA .Goldstein, GOLDSTEIN @gmail.com. That's probably the best way to get me.
Do you have a website where you
I
put
do. I do.
this video that you're going to do with your nurse?
Yes,
friend?
yes. I do have a website. It's Arza Goldstein, End of Life Doula.
Wait, you get cut out.
Okay.
Arza Goldstein, End of Life Doula.
.com. All one long word. Yeah.
That's such a short URL, Arza. That's
yeah.
What a brilliant.
yeah. And if you can come up with something catchy, I'm all ears. I know it's not good. You're right.
It's just long. Like
I know.
Wow,
I know. Yeah. No.
All right, I'll make sure that all gets put out in
Thank you.
show notes in the comments.
And I will send you. I'll send you my your death file for your listeners. And it was a pleasure. And stay well, everybody. And thanks for having the courage to just stay through this sometimes not so easy conversation.
Yes. Thank you all for showing up and for being with us and for yeah, I know. Actually, one person commented, it was a surprise. I didn't expect to find it here in the conversation about whole life, but just as important as living is being aware that it's finite and it ends, and it does influence how we live today. So, Arza, I really appreciate your contribution to the world, your contribution to my community, to me.
Thank you. Thank you. A pleasure.
I feel very blessed for knowing you.
Thank you, Andy. That's very, very nice. I appreciate it very much. And I'm going to ask you listeners to be ambassadors for the conversation, even at a small scale. Go out and plant a seed about this.
Yeah. All right. Well, hang tight, and I'm going to end the broadcast. So hang on.